Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Please hold your questions until the question and answer session. At that time, to ask your questions, please press *1 and record your name. This webinar is being recorded. A recording of the webinar will be available on the EPAC Transportation Regulatory Activities website. The URL will be provided in a slide during the webinar and will be emailed to you afterward. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please press *0 on your phone to speak to an operator. I'd like to turn this conference over to your host. We have Mr. Ted Sears. Sir, you may begin.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to some and good morning to most. Welcome to the EPAC State and Alternative Fuel Provider Fleet Compliance Tool webinar. My name is Ted Sears. I'm with the National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL. Some of you may know NREL serves the U.S. Department of Energy in a number of ways, including providing direct support to the EPAC State and Alternative Fuel Provider Fleet Program. And in this capacity, together with our subcontractors, New West Technologies, L3, and ICF, we provide extensive outreach and compliance assistance and support to covered fleets when we can and when people reach out to us. So we hope that you have availed yourself of some of the help and assistance that we offer as needed in the past through our hotline or email hotline as well. A key role that, among others, that NREL has fulfilled for DOE is the management of the program's compliance database. And the database has been in place until recently for approximately 15 years. And so being 15 years old, it's been in need of an overhaul, including its fleet user interface. This revamp that we've undertaken is now complete, and the database is ready for your use for annual reporting, which that season, of course, has just begun. While we think that it's rather straightforward to use, we thought it would be appropriate to offer you, the fleets, an opportunity, I should say, for a tour, a how-to, if you will. So that's really the purpose of this webinar today, to present the revised database interface and answer any questions related to the database. We'd like to note for you that there will be a second webinar, same presentation, will be presented October 4th at 2 p.m. Eastern. You need not join that one as well, but you're certainly welcome to. And in addition, this webinar is going to be archived and available for you to review if you'd like to. What I'd like to do is turn this over to my colleague, Darlene Stewart, who's also with NREL, and she and her team have been responsible for the redesign of the user interface, attempting to make it more intuitive and simpler to navigate. And since she is the most knowledgeable with the user interface, I'm going to hand it over to her and take it away.
Thanks, Ted. This is Darlene. I wanted to just briefly introduce our team. Nick Merdner is our web expert, and Dave Harrison has been doing the database programming. Rob Eager and John Kruger are our web application programmers, and Matt Rahill is our communications expert. He also wrote our user guide. Joanna Levine and Whit Sparks are managing everything and making sure we all stay on track. So we're here today because of all of those folks' effort, and I really, really want to thank them for an incredible effort in getting this all redone. So I want to move on to just briefly talk about what we're going to talk about today. I have a couple of intro slides, and then we're going to switch over and actually log into the new user interface and kind of walk through a couple of annual reports and give you some idea of how to use the new tool. So the first thing I want to say is that there's some information on this slide, location for the annual reporting tool, and then also more global or general information about this program. As Ted mentioned, all of this information will be emailed to you folks, so don't feel like you have to scribble away to record this right now. We'll email it to everyone. And just a couple notes about logging into the database. You're going to be using your existing username and password. Remember, they're case sensitive. And all of the information from previous year's reporting and any information that you had entered so far into the database in this year, will be has been ported over to the new tool. So everything should be there. If you've been working on it throughout the year, it'll be ported over, and you'll be able to see it and add to it and so forth. If you misplaced your username or password, you can just click on the Forgot Your Password link to reset that automatically. Moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to remind everyone of the annual reporting timeline for the EPAC state and alternative fuel provider fleets. We just finished up model year 2012, and we're now in the reporting period for 2012. The reports need to be filed by the end of the calendar year this year for model year 2012. We're also just beginning the 2013 annual reporting period, and that will run through next August. The reason that I'm kind of going through this right now is that we've kind of changed some of the, or not changed, but we've added some restrictions on when reports can be filed and so forth through the reporting tool. And we want to remind you that you can work on your reports anytime during the model year, but we're asking folks to only submit their reports after the end of the model year. So between now and the end of the calendar year, you can submit your 2012 reports. You can work on your 2013 reports, but you won't be able to submit them until after the end of the 2013 model year. The reason that we wanted to do that was because we want to make sure that all of the information in the reports is complete, so that we don't have to keep going back and revalidating vehicles and so forth. So we're trying to kind of streamline things a little bit from that standpoint, but I just want to reemphasize that you're certainly able to enter information at any time during the year, but you can't submit your reports until the end of the model year. So that, I think, kind of wraps up our sort of intro slide section. Again, saving your report, that happens automatically as you're working through it, but you're only allowed to submit it one time. Once it's submitted, you won't be able to go back and edit it again unless else reopens it for you. Okay, so I'm going to move on to logging into the database, and we'll just kind of walk through the tool. So again, as I mentioned before, you're just going to use your username and password from before. And hopefully I remembered my password. Sometimes our database is a little bit slow here. There we go. Okay, so most users have one fleet. My web user has two fleets. So this is kind of your main navigation screen. I want to point out a couple of sort of navigational tips and hints. There's really two main sections to this. The center section is kind of where you are now. You can also see that through these little breadcrumbs at the top, and that helps you know kind of where you are in the program. You can also use this left navigation section to look at, to kind of navigate back to wherever you want it to go. So there's also some, let's go ahead and look at our fleet here. This is getting a little bit slow. Okay, so once we get this main screen for our particular fleet, we can select our other fleet if we want. And this gives us kind of basic information about this fleet. So here's our new webinar fleet is a alternative fuel provider. This is my address and web users, phone number, and so forth. If I want to manage my fleet contact information, I can just click here on the left nav and edit that information. But I want to go back to annual reporting. So you'll notice I'm able to use this left navigation to get around within the program. So again, we're looking at our new webinar alternative fuel fleet, and you can always, the fleet name is always kind of at the top of the screen here, so you can see which fleet you're talking about. We're going to do standard compliance for this fleet. So you can see that we've kind of reorganized the annual reporting tool so that it's a little bit stepwise. So the first step is to pick the model year that you're going to be working on, and then you kind of stepwise work your way through to the final report summary and submitting your report. So there's a variety of kind of information things here. For example, you can view previous year's reports. There's a link to the user's guide down here at the bottom. So there's, throughout the tool, there's various kind of help screens and things like that. And as we get into reporting, I'll show you a few more of those. So for this particular fleet, we haven't started our report, so we also have listed here the status of our report. We're not able to submit an exemption right now. We won't be able to do that unless the report has been submitted and reviewed by L3 so that we know that all the information in the report is accurate and complete. And then if it's still deficient, then you'll be able to submit an exemption. So this gives you information about what you can do with this report and where you are in the reporting process. So we're just going to go ahead and click on that. So the first thing we want to do is enter the number of light-duty vehicles that we've purchased this year. You'll notice that there's some little question mark icons here, and they pop up with a little bit of a note about getting more information about this particular field. So these occur throughout the application, and you'll see them popping up here in various places. You can also click on these underlined sections to get a little bit more information about, for example, in this case, excluded vehicles. This is a little bit slow on our interface here, but it'll be much quicker when you're looking on the web. Okay, so I bought 10 vehicles this year, and I'm just going to save that. So clicking on the Save button actually saves this information to the database. So I could log out now and log back in, and I would have this information saved for this particular fleet. So I'm going to move on now to the next step and enter some vehicles. And I haven't started this report yet, so there's no information right here, but I can just add a vehicle. This is model year 2012. Let's see, it's a Chevy Corvette is what I bought. go back. Whoops. Wow, this is difficult to do here. There we go. Okay, we can just select a date. And of course, we can only select a date within the model year. So we actually got this pretty quickly. The weight class is a light-duty vehicle. And you'll be familiar with all of these drop-down lists. This is a CNG vehicle that we converted ourselves. So we converted that, but we did it right away. Okay. And there's some optional fields here, like the internal identification number. We're going to not worry about that right now. The stars here represent fields that you need to fill in. If you don't fill those in, you'll get an error, like, for example, and you'll also get an error. Well, since this is so slow, I'll go ahead and save this. So again, this is saving this to the database. So if I logged out right now, I would be able to log back in and all this information would be in there. We can edit that. For example, it turns out it wasn't CNG, it was actually liquefied natural gas. So we can just look at that and then save it again. Okay. We can also copy vehicles. So this gives us the same information that we had for the original vehicle. And I'm just going to save that. But we still have this screen. That's because we already had this VIN number in there. So it won't allow us to add the same VIN number twice. So it turns out that this was the sister vehicle, and it's just got one different VIN number. So now we have two vehicles. So you'll notice that we have two alternative fuel vehicles acquired this model year and 2 credits towards our requirement. If we add a heavy-duty vehicle, let's say a Ford, and we're just going to make this a big car. Again, we don't want to do that. If we add a heavy-duty vehicle, notice that the category code is different for heavy-duty vehicles. That's because we have different choices here. This is a medium-duty truck, if I can select it here. Okay. And then we can save that vehicle. Okay. That's our this web interface is a little bit slow. There we go. Okay. So now in this case we have 3 alternative fuel vehicles that we've added, but we've only got 2 credits towards our requirement. That's because we added a heavy-duty vehicle. And that vehicle is marked with a little asterisk here, and there's a note here at the bottom that explains the fact that you get credit for medium and heavy-duty vehicles after you've already met your requirement through the purchase of light-duty AFEs or meeting some of your requirements through biodiesel use. So we move on to biodiesel, and this is familiar, I'm sure. We just add the amount of neat biodiesel, biodiesel B100, not the amount of the blend. So if we have a 20% blend, only 20% of that would be entered here. We used 1,000 gallons. We get 1 credit for every 450 gallons of biodiesel that we use, so we should get 2 credits for this. And there we have it. Okay, so this next step is a placeholder for the new rules that should be published soon. When you once those are in place, you'll be able to access that part of the program through this tool as well. So we're going to move on to the report. Excuse me. So the reporting page just kind of gives you a summary of everything that you've done so far. We have 10 light-duty vehicles that we acquired. So we have an acquisition requirement of 9 alternative fuel vehicles, 90% of that. We've got 2 light-duty vehicles and 1 medium and heavy-duty vehicle, and we got 2 credits from use of biodiesel. So we have 9 required, 4 credits so far, so we're 5 short. We also have a kind of a summary of any credits that we might have purchased through trades or sold through trades, and then at the end we'll have a balance that shows whether or not we have any excess credits that we might be able to bank for the next year. These are projected or requested, and that's because this report has to be validated before those bank credits can be applied. But we're not going to submit this report right now, but let's just say that we kind of clicked on this by mistake. We get this little note up here that says you won't be able to edit the report after it's submitted, so we don't want to do that, so we'll just cancel that. Okay, so I think we've kind of entered the information that we have so far on this annual report. We have a few more vehicles, but I need to go and get some more information for those, so I'm going to go back to annual reporting and look at my other fleet for a moment. So I want to go back and select that fleet. Notice that I clicked on the fleet management icon or text over here on the left, and I want to click on my other fleet, and that should give me the information about my other fleet. So if I click on annual reporting for that fleet, and again, we're looking for both of my fleets, we're looking at standard compliance. If you want to do alternative compliance, or you want to look at that information for alternative compliance, you can click on this. This takes you to the alternative compliance tool. That's a separate tool within the site. So for this particular fleet, we have both the 2012 reports and the 2013 reports are in progress already. So we're just going to look at the 2012 one. apologize for the slowness of our website here. Again, we had 10 light-duty vehicles, so we need 9 vehicles. We've already entered 5 vehicles, or we've entered we've acquired 5 vehicles. We didn't have any biodiesel for this fleet. Oh, this is slow. There we go. Okay, so these are the vehicles that I have so far for this fleet. As you can see, I have this one medium and heavy-duty vehicle. Although I'm not quite sure that's a medium and heavy-duty vehicle. It might actually be a light-duty vehicle. So we have 6 AFVs acquired, and I went back and looked at my information, and I realized that this is actually a light-duty vehicle. So I'll change this to light-duty, and it's a pickup, and then we'll save that. There we go. Okay. So now you can see that I have 6 AFUs that I acquired, and I got 6 credits because I've got, they're all light-duty vehicles. So I still need 3. So I'm going to go to the report page. And here again is our credit summary. In this case, we don't have any biodiesel use credits, and we don't have any medium and heavy-duty vehicles. But I'm going to go ahead and use some of my bank credits, but I want to keep a few in reserve, so I'm just going to enter 2. Hopefully, someday. Okay. So now we see that we still have 1 credit shortfall, but I decided I want to go ahead and think about submitting my report anyway. So now we get a little note that says you still need 1 credit to fulfill your requirement, and you have 4 bank credits available. So again, asking the question of whether you're sure you want to submit the annual report. Well, gosh, maybe you're right. Maybe I should really use as many credits as I need to. So let's go ahead and make that 3. That's how many credits I'm short so far. So we'll save that. And now we have 3 bank credits that we applied towards our requirement. So we have no credit shortfall. So now we're really ready to submit the report. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for this fleet. Okay, so notice that we have these little kind of flags at the top here that tell us where, you know, whether or not we were successful with whatever it was we were just trying to do. This is another way of knowing that your information has been saved, or if it hasn't, that it hasn't been saved, and you need to fix something. So notice how the Submit Report button is disabled now, so we can't click on it. So if we go back, again, we can use this left navigation to look at, for example, viewing our annual reports, and we're still looking at Darlene's webinar fleet. Hopefully, someday we'll be looking at annual reports. There we go. Okay, so there's a variety of kind of tools and helpful reports and information that we've added to the tool. One of them is to look at previous year's annual reports. So we just started this fleet in 2009, so we created a report, but we didn't file it because we didn't have any vehicle acquisitions that year, but we wanted to get started with this fleet. And then we reported in 2010, 2011, and so forth. Notice that our 2012 report is now submitted, and our model 2013 report is still in progress. So this gives us a good overview of where we are, make sure that we cover everything. And if we kind of drop down this 2011 report, we can see that we had 7 acquisitions required that year, and but we actually bought more vehicles, and so we were able to bank 2 credits for the next year. You can also get a PDF download of the annual report, and so that's that. We go back to our reporting screen here. So obviously you can save that PDF report to a file if you want. So that's annual reports. We also can look at our credit trades. So in 2011, for this particular fleet, we also had a trade with my test fleet, which is no longer covered. That's why they were getting rid of all their extra bank credits. So this gives us some information about the trade, the from fleet, and obviously we purchased these, so this is my fleet. This gives us some information, so in future years we might want to buy some more credits, and this will be helpful if you want to go back and look at, try to remember the phone number or so forth of the person that you bought credits from previously, or if you have credits to sell, you can contact some of these folks. So going back to fleet management, again, we have various ways that you can get to places within the tool, and so this center section kind of gives you a more, as I said earlier, kind of a more stepwise approach, but you can always use this left navigation as well. So we already looked at the managing the fleet contact, and this is for the fleet. If you want to manage your POC account, that would be clicking on My Account button. So here's where we can change our login credentials. For example, I can change my username or password there, or I can change my contact information for the POC here. Again, we can use the left nav to go back to looking at the fleets, and we can select a different fleet if we want, and then we can get information for that particular fleet by viewing annual reports or credit trades or so forth, and that will be for this other fleet. Okay, so I didn't have too much more to review for this. There's a couple of other reports that you might want to look at. For example, if we go to, well, actually, let's go back to our other fleet here. We have more information for this fleet. If we look at the actual reports, The other thing we can do is we can download our vehicle data to a spreadsheet. So, for example, if we want to keep track of it for another purpose, we can just download it to a spreadsheet. And I'm going to go ahead and click this, even though, so we'll just open that. So this is a CSV file, but it can be opened in Excel. So again, you could, information that you've entered into the database for your vehicles, you can download as a spreadsheet. So I think that's about it. That kind of covers the basics of getting through the new database tool, and I hope you'll find it easy to use and pretty straightforward. I guess we can open it up for questions now.
Thank you very much. And as a reminder, to ask your questions, please press star then 1 on your phone. Please be sure your line is unmuted and record your name when prompted. To withdraw your request, it is star 2. Once again, for your questions over the phone, please press star then 1. One moment for your first questions. Once again, for your questions over the phone, please press star then 1. There are some questions coming through. One moment, please. This first question comes from Steve Rosenstock. Your line is open, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the webinar today, and I was wondering that I represent utilities that have fleets, and everyone is wondering about the new final rule for credits for alternative fuel vehicles. So I guess the question is, once the final rule is published by Department of Energy, how long will it take to update this online database, do you think?
Hi, Steve. This is Ted Sears speaking. Appreciate the question. Yes, everyone is waiting for that rulemaking, and it is in process with the Department of Energy. We are in the process of working on the database to try to get it ready so it'll be up and ready to go. Please note that the database as it is sufficient for reporting for model year 2012. We are hopeful that the rulemaking will be out soon, and at its earliest application would be for 2013. So should not be an issue.
Thank you.
Sure.
Once again, to ask your questions, it is star then 1 on your phone. This question comes from Brian Evans. Your line is open, sir.
Yeah, thank you. What's the going rate for selling a credit? I'm sure it kind of varies, but in your experience?
Again, this is Ted Sears. That is information. We don't actually collect that information, so we don't really have a good answer to it. I apologize. It's just not something that is, back up a step. DOE, like any government agency, is only allowed to collect information that is approved by the Office of Management and Budget, and that is not an item that was approved for collection. So, for example, if you were to undertake a credit trade, you'll note that on the form it does not list how much the credit was sold for.
Right.
So we don't actually have that information.
Okay.
I would suggest perhaps speaking with some of your fellow POCs might be a good way to try to track that down.
Okay, thank you.
And this next question comes from Gilbert. Your line is open, sir.
Yes, I'm with Pennsylvania Turnpike, and I currently have all our vehicles entered for this 2012 year. I'm just waiting to send it. Am I going to have to re-enter everything under this new system, or will that still work for me?
No, you should be able to, when you log in, you will be taken to this new system, but your vehicle should be all there. So you should, all of the information that you've entered so far should be in the database. If it's not, please contact us.
Great, thank you.
This next question comes from, I believe it's Ms. Camo. Your line is open.
Hi, I want to thank you again for your information today. You showed how you were able to download a spreadsheet from the information that you put in the website, but are you able to upload a spreadsheet if I've already started one on my personal hard drive?
Unfortunately, no. We have a spreadsheet reporting tool that you can download from the website and fill in. A lot of folks who have many, many vehicles do it that way because they can just copy everything into an Excel spreadsheet. And we can upload that spreadsheet, but we don't have a functionality for uploading kind of a user-defined spreadsheet. It's very difficult to give people instructions that are clear enough so that they can upload a spreadsheet that they design themselves and have everything wind up in the right place. So we did not do that. But as I said, you can download the program spreadsheet and transfer your information to that.
That is what I was talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we do have a new spreadsheet. Please use the new one. Download it from the website.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And as a reminder, to ask your questions, it is *1 on your phone. This question comes from Mark Warren. Your line is open, sir.
In the past, when I filled out the form, I entered a number of credits, an assumptive number of credits that I would want to apply. From my understanding of the description you gave when you entered your data as your example, we need now to go through the entire process, get out of the form, and then go back in to see how many credits we would need to apply. Would that be correct?
No, the reporting, you can skip to the reporting sheet at any time and get a summary of the number of vehicles that you've entered so far, biodiesel credits, and if you want to apply credits, you can do that. We do have the database just so that we're able to keep track of everything. It gets a little bit buggy if you apply credits and then you go back and add additional vehicles. It's a little bit more complicated math to keep track of how many credits you should apply and so forth. So if you go to the reporting page and apply credits, and then go back and change like the number of vehicles that you have or something like that, it'll zero out the number of applied credits. So when you get to doing your final submission, that's when you want to apply your credits. We just left that to the end because if you change something like you add another vehicle, then you don't need to apply as many credits. So we want to make sure that you kind of do that step last.
All right, I think that answers my question. Thanks.
Yeah, the number of bank credits available under year one of the tool, so I'm kind of highlighting it right now, those are from previous years. So that's the number that you have available. And you can always skip to the reporting screen and look at kind of where you are in the process. But then you can go back and add more biodiesel or more vehicles or whatever. But I do want to caution that we'll zero out the number of applied credits if you do make other changes to the database. So you'll have to do that, kind of do that last.
All right, thank you.
And once again, it is *1 to ask your questions over the phone. In this question, there was not a name recorded, but if you had pressed *1, your line is open. Once again, if you had pressed *1, your line is open. Please check to see if your phone is muted.
Hi, this is Tara Kelly with Colorado Springs Utilities. Am I on the line?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I had two questions. One is regarding excluded vehicles. So those are not to be included in your total light-duty vehicle acquisition number. Can you can you get credit for alternative fuel vehicles that you purchase for excluded vehicles?
Yes, you can.
So you would not include them in your total light-duty vehicle number. However, you would enter them as an acquired vehicle?
Right.
And then how do you note that it's an excluded vehicle, or you don't need to?
You don't need to.
Okay. And then my second question is regarding banked credits that someone may have, and also wanting to put in an exemption request. When you are reporting, do you need to utilize credits to meet your acquisition requirements and then submit an exemption request and then get credits back if that exemption request goes through, or what should the process be?
I think, Ted, maybe I'll turn that over to you.
Okay. Currently, as things stand, you need not apply bank credits. We encourage you to do so. But you need not apply the bank credits, and you can go ahead and seek exemptions. If you apply bank credits, it will then, DOE can exercise its discretion as to whether you would, and then if you apply bank credits and then seek an exemption, it would be up to DOE's discretion as to whether we would, not we, but DOE would apply the credits back to your bank account if you are granted an exemption, or instead decline your exemption.
Okay, so then in order to meet your regulatory deadline, should you be submitting your exemption request obviously as soon as you can, but what happens if the 12/31/11 deadline, or 12, sorry, comes and goes and you still haven't heard back regarding the status of your exemption request, and obviously then your report shows you delinquent?
Well, you first need to submit your report.
Right.
And once your report is submitted, then you may seek exemptions. And so if you say, for example, you waited till the last minute, which we hope you don't, to submit your annual report, and you submitted it on December 31st, before you can seek exemptions, DOE will have to log your report, in other words, do a sort of a completeness check to make sure that your report is complete before you can then seek your exemptions.
But in the event that your exemption request is denied, or certain vehicles and that is denied, then at that point can you utilize banked credits to meet your acquisition requirements?
Yes. Yep.
And if that's after the 12/31/12 date, is that an issue?
No, that's not an issue. As long as you meet your annual report filing deadline.
Okay, great.
You should be fine.
Thank you.
Yep.
There are currently no further questions in the queue.
Okay. Well, I think this is Ted Sears again. I think I'd like to say thank you to Darlene and her team for putting this webinar together. And Darlene, do you have any further thoughts?
No, just, please, log in and test this out as soon as possible. If you do find anything wrong or something that doesn't look like it's working correctly or your information isn't in there correctly, please contact us through L3.
So we just wound up with 3 more questions in the queue. Did you want to go ahead and take them?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Gilbert, your line is open, sir.
Thank you. Hey, I'm in the live session here, and I see where it wants number 2, the requirements, light-duty alternative fuel vehicles required. Again, how do I compile that number? Just want to make sure this is my first year of reporting.
Right. Well, for an alternative, so for this particular one that we have up on the screen, this is an alternative fuel provider fleet. And the requirement for acquiring AFVs is 90% of the light-duty vehicle count. So the only information that you need to enter is the number of light-duty vehicles that you acquired during the year, either alternative fuel vehicles or conventionally fueled vehicles. And this, of course, does not include excluded vehicles. So if you just click on this excluded vehicles notation here, you can see this kind of gives you a summary of which vehicles are excluded. So those are not included in your light-duty vehicle count. So what you want to do is just go through all of your vehicle acquisitions for the year, take these ones out, these excluded vehicles, and then that leaves you with the number of light-duty vehicles that you acquired during the year. And again, I want to emphasize that that's those conventionally fueled vehicles and alternative fuel vehicles. And then once you have that number, that's the number that you enter here in your light-duty vehicle acquisition requirement. And this number here, the 81, is calculated for you.
Okay, so being that I'm a state fleet, mine would only be 75%, correct?
Right. That's correct.
Thank you.
Your next question comes from Jonathan Jones. Your line is open, sir.
Yes, good morning. We was wondering about the download for the vehicles. We saw that you can download, I guess you'd call it the template. Is there any way for us to upload all of our vehicles instead of having to enter them one at a time?
Yes. Again, as I said, if you go to the program website, you can download the spreadsheet for the program, and that spreadsheet, if you send that spreadsheet to L3 can upload it into the database. The vehicle CSV file that I showed you, which is the download of the vehicles that you have entered into the application one by one, that file cannot be used to upload vehicles back into the application. So you would need to download the spreadsheet from the main program website.
Okay, and then you said send that to L3?
Yes. It's the AFDC email.
Okay. So we would put that on there and then email that to you, and y'all would dump it in for us.
That is correct. So it's EPAC SFP fleets at nrel.gov, and we'll send that out in the email that has the summary information for this webinar.
Oh, thank you.
This next question comes from Walt Sturkey. Your line is open.
Thank you. The webinar this morning has been very informative, and it should help me with my completing my transaction for this model year. My question is, earlier there was discussion around a new ruling coming out that may be effective in the model year 2013. Could someone briefly describe a summary of what that new ruling is, or could be?
I think I'll turn this over to Ted.
Sorry, so you're referring to the forthcoming final rule?
Correct.
Correct. Well, the subject matter of that rule is related to the allocation of credits for electric drive vehicles that are not otherwise receiving credit as alternative fuel vehicles, as well as credits for investments in certain alternative fuel infrastructure and non-road equipment. That rulemaking is in process with the Department of Energy. The proposed rule came out last October, and the comment period ended at the end of December. And that's where that stands. I can't really, in all honesty, can't really address when it will be issued because it's out of our hands at this point.
Yeah, would that affect non-plug-in Prius hybrids?
It would address non-plug-in vehicles, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And this question comes from Stacy Orr. Your line is open.
Yes, I'm just curious. My organization just recently went through a merger, and now I'm responsible for the compliance reporting for both organizations that previously were covered fleets. How do I go about getting both of these covered fleets combined onto one?
What you want to do is contact the program, and they'll help you. Deb Gross at Elstree will help you work through that. Okay.
Is there an email or a telephone number I can contact?
Yeah, again, it's the same one as EPAC SFP Fleets at nrel.gov, and again, we'll send that email link out to everyone after this call.
Okay, great.
There's another question in the queue. If you had pressed star 1, there was not a name recorded, but your line is open.
Holly from National Fuel. Can you guys hear me?
Uh-huh.
I got a question about sometimes when you're doing these, you have questions that appear. Is there a help on this to where you could click and maybe automatically it goes to Ted or somebody else that could help us?
I'm just going to scroll down here to the bottom. So there's a contact that you can click on, and that gives you Ted's email. So.
Okay, I got you right there. Perfect. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're not sure of something, and it's something we don't do every single day. You do it once a year, so.
Sure, that's right.
Good to know. Thank you.
And you can also contact us at the email that we'll send out.
Perfect.
After the webinar.
Looks beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.
And there are no further questions in the queue at this time.
Okay, maybe we'll give people another 2 or 3 minutes to see if there are any other questions that come up. Otherwise, I think I appreciate everyone being online and visiting with the webinar. And thank you for your patience with the connection. It was a little bit slow, but I think you'll find that when you're on there with a direct line into the database, it's quite smooth.
I'll give one more reminder to ask those questions. It is star then 1 on your phone. No further questions are in the queue, sir.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Please jump into the database and try it out, give it a spin, and if you have questions or comments, feedback, we always welcome it, and we're always available for questions, and we look forward to being in touch with you in the future. Thank you, and thank you, Darlene.
Thanks, Ted.